OK, thank you, Patrick O'Flynn. Wes Streeting, I think you're there now. Welcome to the Camilla Tomley Show and GB News. Thank you for coming on. You want a national conversation about the NHS, so let's have one right now. Why is it that spending can go up by 2.8% a year in the NHS between 2015, 16, 2022, 2023, but the outcomes get worse? Why is it that the numbers of operations performed by surgeons falls between 2019 and 2023? Why is it we tip more money into this leaky bucket and it's not getting any better for our viewers and listeners?
That is exactly the right question. And what's happened is we've seen more money and more staff poured in, but without the reform. And I think the lesson of the last Labour government that delivered the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction in history is that it's investment plus reform that delivers results. And that's why a big focus of me, the Chancellor, is about how we make sure that alongside any investment that goes in, we improve the productivity of the system. There will be a big focus in the budget around the investment in things like capital and tech so that we can make the system more efficient. But even where we're doing things like the 40,000 more appointments every week, that will also be achieved through reformed ways of working so we get more bang for the buck, because people are feeling the pinch in their pockets at the moment, and right across the public sector we've got pressures. So we can't just keep on pouring more money in without reform. That would be a waste of money we don't have and a waste of time that we don't have as well.
Well, why do you think you can do better than other ministers? I mean, let's put the Tory government to one side, but Gordon Brown increased NHS spending by 7% in real terms in 2001. Most people think that money went into the pockets of staff, not into actual outcomes for taxpayers who pay for the service. Why are you different to all of your predecessors?
Well, hang on a second. I mean, as I said, the last Labour government did deliver the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction. And actually, I want to take issue with Patrick. I caught what he said there. We've been in for 3 months. In that time, we've ended the junior doctors' strikes. We've introduced a ban on junk food targeted at kids. We've employed 1,000 more GPs onto the NHS front line. In the coming days, we'll be sending crack teams of clinicians into hospitals, not just with high waiting lists, but high numbers of people off work, off sick. And also, just last week at the International Investment Summit, where we agreed £63 billion worth of deals with the private sector, some of that money was also earmarked for life sciences and groundbreaking treatments to tackle obesity. So I'm not pretending we've fixed it all in a few months. Of course, we're not going to do that, and I can't fix 14 years of problems in one budget. But we have hit the ground running. We're getting on with the job, and of course, the best is yet to come.
But why did Professor Sir John Bell, a former Oxford University Regius professor, saying he thinks the NHS is not underfunded? To be honest, well, you're not getting the best out of the money you're getting. I mean, why is he saying that?
Well, I think John's got a fair point in that, if you look at the Darzi investigation we commissioned into the state of the NHS, Ara Darzi pointed out that we've actually had more staff going into our hospitals, for example, but productivity has fallen. Now, that's partly because we've not given staff the tools to do the job, and you talk to people in the NHS, and when I say things like, look, we're going to improve life sciences and medical technology, the staff say, that's brilliant, but I'd be just grateful if I could go into work and turn a machine on in the morning and it works reliably, or if I don't have to input 7 passwords to deal with one patient. So we've got to get the basics right. It's also about making sure the money goes to the right places. And, for example, pouring more and more money into our hospitals isn't going to fix the crisis. I think putting more money into neighbourhood health services, primary care, that would make a difference, because if someone can't get a GP appointment that costs 40 quid, for example, they can end up in A&E, which costs 400. So you can see how that would be worse for patients in terms of their convenience in getting to the right place at the right time, also worse for the taxpayer. And that's why I'm focused relentlessly on reform and making sure the NHS works more efficiently, more effectively. And it's been interesting since the general election. Obviously, the Conservative Party won't admit their mistakes, but I've had support from the Liberal Democrats, and I've had support from Nigel Farage and the Reform Party on some of the things we've been saying about NHS reform. So I think we are building a new national consensus here, and I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, well, but everyone hopes that you can improve services, but the record so far hasn't shown up by previous governments. But moving on to where the money's coming from, the budget, October 30th, you did say in your manifesto you weren't going to increase national insurance or the basic hire or additional rate of income tax or VAT. So why are you looking at increasing national insurance, and why are you looking at increasing income tax by freezing thresholds?
So I'll just say two things. Firstly, I genuinely don't know what decisions the Chancellor has made or is making about tax, because she doesn't share those until much closer to the budget. And I'm not going to speculate because I value my kneecaps, and the Chancellor won't tolerate me going around speculating about her budget. But all I would say, just on this point about national insurance, we were very clear in our manifesto: no increases in income tax, national insurance or VAT on working people. And we will keep those promises. And I remember us getting criticised before the general election with people saying, well, why aren't you making bigger promises? Why aren't you going to spend more on X, Y or Z? We were deliberately cautious because we knew that the public finances are in a state. In fact, they're even worse than we expected. But therefore, we wanted to make sure that the promises we made were promises we could keep and the country can afford. And despite the challenges we've walked into, I can tell you we will honour every single one of those manifesto commitments.
But it's widely agreed that the Tories lost power because they lost trust with the electorate. Aren't you risking that very trust that you won the election with by increasing taxes for working people? You are doing that, aren't you, by increasing employers' NICs and carrying on the freeze with the thresholds in income tax?
Well, we were criticised by the Tories before the election because we didn't rule out explicitly those things. But I just say to people watching, like, we don't take your trust lightly. And we know how low the opinion of politics and politicians in this country is at the moment, and that includes us. I think it really is a plague on all your houses as far as the public are concerned, and that is why we are determined to earn your trust through what we actually deliver. And I just say to people, especially as we are making some choices that are unpopular, the last thing you want, surely, is more government by gimmick, more short-term sticking plasters, and the false hope of broken promises. That's not what we're going to do. And we are working hell for leather to make sure that when this government's time comes to an end, that we leave this country in a better place than we found it. That is something that Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives couldn't say after 14 years of Conservative government. We are determined to do better. We have an enormous challenge on our hands. We can't fix all of those problems in one budget, but we are focused on fixing the foundations, getting the basics right, and not just rebuilding our economy and rebuilding our public services, but rebuilding trust in politics as a force for good.
And just finally, Wes Streeting, back to your department, you like to tell us you're not the fun police, you're not the nanny state, and you have once said the NHS can't pick up the tab for unhealthy lifestyles. But should the NHS be funding Ozempic, this miracle anti-obesity drug? Why not get people to eat less and move more and save us all money?
So, I'd say two things. Firstly, these weight loss jabs aren't a panacea. Like, we can't just jab our way to a healthy living. And in fact, I think, we're watching the evidence really closely. We're about to start a trial. It was one of the things we announced at the International Investment Summit last week. But I think the emerging evidence is that jabs alone won't work. You've got to do the jabs plus changes to diet and exercise. So where people are able to access the treatment, the right to access the treatment will come with the responsibility to do the right thing. We don't want a dependency culture in this country.
Thank you to